It was the massacre which left around 8,000 people dead. Serbia's parliament has finally apologized to the Bosnian Muslim victims of the Srebrenica massacre, calling it a crime. Is there more to this apology than meets the eye? And is it 15 years too late? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Imran Garda. Serbia is drafting a new declaration to commemorate their own victims of the Balkan Wars. This just a day after Serbia said sorry for the 1995 Srebrenica massacre, Europe's worst atrocity since World War II. Well, on Wednesday, Serbia's parliament passed the landmark resolution apologizing for the killings. Approved by a narrow majority, the motion says Serbia should have done more to prevent the tragedy. Almost 8,000 men and boys were marched out of the UN safe haven of Srebrenica by Serb forces and shot dead. Some are disappointed with the fact that the resolution stopped short of calling the Srebrenica killings genocide.
There was genocide in Srebrenica. The court has ruled that it was genocide, and we mothers who were victims of that genocide know that. It is shameful of some parliamentarians in Serbia that have no conscience, and they will never have it. I congratulate some parliamentarians who are telling the truth.
Let's get a little background to this before we get into the discussion. Well, after the fall of communism in 1991, Bosnia was headed by a coalition government made up of Serbs, Croats and Muslims, each with their own agenda. In 1992, the Croats and Muslims formed a fragile alliance. The Serbs proclaimed control over half of the country, triggering the deadly war. A year later, UN safe havens for Bosnian Muslims were created to include Sarajevo, Gorazde and Srebrenica. Well, it was in mid-1995 that the Srebrenica massacre took place. At the end of that year, the conflict ended with the Dayton Peace Accord. In 2004, EU peacekeepers took over. Then in 2007, the International Court of Justice ruled that the killings at Srebrenica constituted genocide, but it didn't directly hold Serbia accountable. A year later, former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic, wanted for war crime charges, was captured in Belgrade after over a decade on the run. And this year, Bosnian Serbs in the autonomous Republika Srpska passed a law in February making it easier to hold referendums on national issues. This could pave the way for their independence from Bosnia-Herzegovina. And now the Serb parliament's apology. Well, some accuse the Serb government of engineering this recent vote to push for membership of the European Union. But as one veteran Balkans watcher pointed out, Serbia was in a no-win position.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't do anything, people accuse you of not facing up to the past and of not doing anything. And then if you do something, people say, oh, well, you're only doing it for cynical reasons because you want to join the EU. I mean, if it helps in terms of rehabilitating Serbia's image, I really can't see that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, joining us now are our guest in Sarajevo, Emir Suljagic. He's a journalist and author of Postcards from the Grave, a first-hand account of the Srebrenica massacre. Also in Sarajevo, Kurt Basuna. He's senior associate at Democratization Policy Council. And in Belgrade, Slobodan Samardžija. He's assistant editor of Foreign Desk Politica, a Serbian daily newspaper. Gentlemen, thank you all of you for joining us. Slobodan Samardžija, if I could start with you, do you agree with Mr. Juda, who we just heard from, that Serbia was left with no other choice?
Well, I wouldn't say so, but anyway, it is. The declaration is a good way for joining European Union, of course, because it is our goal.
Why the apology now and not earlier?
Well, you know, it is all matter of time. The politics is such a thing that you must grab what you have in certain times. I don't think that it is. I think more that the declaration is the calling to the other side, especially to Muslim, to see what really happened, not just in Srebrenica but in all other cities in Bosnia, and to finally find a way to express what happened, and was it crime, was it not crime? Of course it was crime.
When you say what really happened, when you say to find out what really happened in Srebrenica, do you contest the official version of events?
No, it's not that, but what I mean is that before killing in Srebrenica, there was also killing near the Srebrenica, and the victims were, of course, the Serbs. So it is not just a one-side story, you know. So I think that our aim, our goal of the declaration is to start talks about all these things and to make peace after all. And because if we don't solve that thing, I don't think that the Bosnian war will ever be over.
Emir Suljagic in Sarajevo.
In our minds, of course.
Okay, let's move on to Emir Suljagic. I see you shaking your head in disagreement. What do you think about this apology and its timing?
Well, I mean, I'd actually like to start out from what Mr. Samardžić said. It seems to me that he's speaking here on behalf of the Serbian government, and that the official position of the Serbian government is, let's put all the facts on the table and then pick out of this huge amount and this mountain of facts those that we like and those that we don't like, and then let's accept and agree on those that we like and ignore those that we don't. I mean, the truth of the matter here is that the resolution on Srebrenica and the issue of whether it mentions genocide or not is completely beside the point. We have come to the point where 15 years after the end of the war, we have somehow reduced the entire experience of ethnic cleansing and genocide in, I apologize for this, ethnic cleansing and genocide in Bosnia to 5 days of July 1995. Which is completely ridiculous, let's be honest. I mean, are we supposed to expect another resolution of the Serbian parliament regarding the siege of Sarajevo?
Shouldn't you be given, sorry to interrupt you, shouldn't you be giving credit where credit is due? Because there is a massive difference, for example, between what Radovan Karadzic said at The Hague very recently, calling Srebrenica a myth, and this, where you have the parliament actually admitting that these crimes did occur. Isn't there a massive difference between the two, which shows you the big difference between leaders past and present? So maybe you should be giving credit where credit is due to the Serbian government.
Let me just start off by saying that Radovan Karadzic is not really a sort of reference of any sort, especially not in this conversation. That's one thing. The other thing is, again, we cannot. I mean, Serbia cannot. This is a way out on the and way out on the cheap for Serbia. Out of facing responsibility and owning up to what it did, not only in Srebrenica. Come on, I mean, again, what happened in Bosnia is not genocide in Srebrenica, it's genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 49% of this territory has no Muslims or Croats any longer. I mean, and those that are there are not viable as communities. They no longer exist. That, you know, from the receiving end of it, it looks like genocide very much. So that's the matter. I mean, again, for me, this resolution is no more than a PR stunt. A successful one, I'll give you that, right. But no more than a PR stunt.
Okay, Kurt Basuna, is this no more than a PR stunt, in your opinion?
I think that the way I would unpack it is this. I mean, this resolution did take some political heft to do, but let's look at what the intended payoff was. When President Tadic and Foreign Minister Vuk Jeremic are all talking about we need to do this to pave our way to the EU, well, let's look at what's standing in the path of moving toward the EU right now. That is the position of the Dutch government. Now, remember that Dutch troops were in Srebrenica in July 1995, and they basically handed over the Bosniaks who were killed to the Bosnian Serb army. The Bosnian Serb army commander at that time was Ratko Mladic, who is presumed to be in Serbia, not only widely, but also by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. The Dutch government has its foot on the brake, if you will, on any further progress of Serbia toward EU membership, and that is signing the Stabilization and Association Agreement, ratifying it, until Ratko Mladic is handed over and sent to The Hague. If that policy were universal among the 27 members of the EU, I think Mladic would be in The Hague now. I think that's the policy that got Karadzic handed over to The Hague in the summer of 2008. What I think the Serbian government is attempting to do here is attempting to make it harder for the Dutch government to maintain that position, and at the very least making it easier for the next Dutch government, because they're having elections on June 9th, to back off from that policy. And I think that is what the intended goal of this resolution is.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Let's go to Slobodan Samardžić. That appeals court in The Hague had turned down the lawsuit filed by the Mothers of Srebrenica organization, which are the wives and mothers and other relatives of victims. Those Dutch peacekeepers stood by when the massacre occurred. I'm supposing maybe Bosnians and Serbs would be in agreement on this one point, that surely the UN, surely the Dutch should face some sort of accountability, no?
Well, of course, because they were there, they were present at that time. But I wouldn't say that it's much blame on them. After all, it was not their war. It was war between people in Bosnia. I wouldn't say between Serbs or Muslims or Croats. I would say between people who live in Serbia, in Bosnia, because you know, it is not just. It was not just ethnic war. It was much more than that. That people used to live in that Bosnia for ages, you know, and they just can't start fighting each other just like that. So I wouldn't say that you can blame only Dutch, of course. But the main problem is, I mean, the main thing is that accepting the declaration, you know, you express your feeling that you want to do something more than that. But you need to do that. You need the other side. You must have the people who can you talk to, so that you hear what they have to say about it. But not just saying that. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I mean, there was this passing of Serbia's own resolution commemorating its own victims. You touched on that in your first answer. Wouldn't some think that isn't this what this was all about? That the apology and now this new resolution come as some sort of package, that Serbia only did the initial apology for Srebrenica so that it could pass what it wanted to do the next day?
Well, you know, the problem is that the Srebrenica is a high point of all that talking. So I wouldn't say that Srebrenica, of course, it was the major crime, but that was not the only crime. So I think that it is the start of something new. And if Bosnians want to accept that start, it will be okay. But if they don't want to accept it, they have to say what they want really to accept. Because the International Tribunal at Hague already, International Court of Justice in Hague already said that it was a genocide in Srebrenica. But it was not the genocide that made Serbia. It was genocide that happened in Bosnia. So you cannot accept you cannot accept that Serbia is only guilty for all that things. So,
okay,
I think that it is okay.
Okay, I'm sure Amir would contest that. Let me go to Amir Suljagic in Sarajevo. Amir.
Well, I mean, well, as a matter of fact, I think we all seem to be missing the point that. Out of 3 years of what's colloquially referred to as war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, at least 6 months of it, from spring of 1992 to early autumn, was wholesale and one-sided, brutal mass murder of the Bosnian Muslim and Croat population. And that every single bullet and every single shell that was used in that mass murder was either produced or delivered from Serbia into Bosnia and Herzegovina and to the Bosnian Serb army. I mean, let's not forget that, because that's a fact. And that's another fact that was established by ICJ. The fact is that ICJ also said that, you know, Republika Srpska, which is this 49% of Bosnia today, wouldn't have been able to stay afloat, let alone wage a mass murder campaign, ethnic cleansing campaign against Bosnian Muslims. So, you know, that's another thing. I mean, let's not. The thing is, I mean, if Mr. Samardzic said, what do Bosnians want? Well, let me tell you what do Bosnians want. Bosnians want Serbia to finally acknowledge and recognize Bosnia as a state, as a state equal to Serbia. And, you know, just one day, or actually on the very same day of the adoption of the declaration, the foreign minister of Serbia, Mr. Vuk Jeremic, says that Bosnia's integrity is under no threat as long as Serbia guarantees that, which tells me at least that Serbia still sees Bosnian integrity and sovereignty as a matter of its own will or lack of it.
Well, that's interesting.
So that's not really.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I want to get Kurt's thoughts on that, because Kurt, Milorad Dodik, the Bosnian Serb Prime Minister of Republika Srpska, wants a referendum for it to break away. he's going to push for that. Radovan Karadzic, sitting in The Hague, must be smiling in his jail cell, surely.
Well, I think that the Milorad Dodik has been allowed all the rules that applied to Dayton Bosnia, the Bosnia-Herzegovina that emerged from the Dayton Agreement in November 1995, have been allowed to lapse in the past 3 to 4 years. So it's open table. Everybody with an unfulfilled agenda, and that includes Milorad Dodik, feels that there's no leash. They could run, and there are no more red lines. And that is attributable to the international community that wanted to declare victory here, still wants to declare victory here, and has not reckoned with the need to make this country a self-sustaining, functioning state. So yes, I mean, if things continue on as they are, Karadzic could say, I was just a man ahead of my time, and I was far-seeing, and I may pay the price for being on trial, but ultimately my project will succeed.
You mentioned
that
Ratko.
doesn't have to happen.
You mentioned Ratko Mladic earlier.
Greater international will than we've seen.
Sorry to interrupt you. You mentioned Ratko Mladic earlier,
Correct.
the general in charge
yes.
of the Srebrenica massacre, who's still on the run. Does the Serb government know where he is, in your opinion? Are they trying all they can, as they say they are?
I don't believe so. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia has asserted in report after report that they don't think Serbia is doing everything it can to apprehend and transfer Ratko Mladic for trial. There were videos that were released late last year that showed that he was in Serbia as late as 3 years ago. And we've seen this movie before, not only with Mladic, but with Karadzic as well, that there are statements, oh, we don't know where he is, and then subsequently it comes out that some officials say, oh, we knew where he was then, but we certainly don't know now. So the credibility factor is pretty low. I think if it was, the calculus is very simple. If it's politically worth Serbia's while to hand him over, which would generate opprobrium from a large segment of the Serbian population, they do it. But if they think they could get it for free, and this goes back to what Emir said about trying to get it on the cheap, they'll do it. That's politicians are the same everywhere. They don't do heavy lifting unless they have to. And I think that's the calculus that we're seeing play out right now.
Slobodan Samardžija, the Serb government will catch and hand in Ratko Mladic if the timing is right, according to Kurt. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if I knew where he was. I think I'll be the richest man in the world. But anyway, I don't think that even if we capture Ratko Mladic and send it to The Hague, I don't think that people in Bosnia will live better than that. Of course, he has to go to Hague and he has to go on trial and to pay for what he has done. But that is not the point. The point is that people in Bosnia, first of all, they must agree that they live together again, like they used to live before. And if they don't do that, they will try to find any other way to express their angerness or whatever, you know. So I think that the problem is in the Bosnia, not in Serbia, of course.
The problem's with Bosnia, not Serbia, Amir.
I mean, with all due respect, that's simply not true. I mean, the problem beginning in the 1990s for Bosnia has been the amount, the kind, and the way Serbia exercised its influence. I mean, come on, let me just tell you, you know, I don't know if this is the right place to do it, but I was 17. I was living in a small town on the very border between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to me it looked like all of this started when Army of Yugoslavia, JNA, Yugoslav People's Army, whatever you call it, followed by paramilitary, so-called paramilitary forces, which were actually under control of Serbian state security services, came to my town, basically took over power and started expelling Bosnian Muslims. So that's how it kind of looked to me. I was only 17. I admit I may have been wrong. And ever since, Serbia has not stopped meddling in Bosnia. It is not doing it now. And it doesn't look like it's likely to stop doing it. Again, I want to refer you to this statement made by Mr. Jeremic. He's basically saying Serbia can decide whether Bosnia is a sovereign state or not, which is really not the way to proceed.
Right. Kurt Basuna, however you perceive these recent decisions by the Serb Parliament and the debates that are going on in Serbia, if all of this helps pave the way for EU membership for Serbia, would that be a good thing or a bad thing for the region?
I think if Serbia were to meet all the conditions necessary for each subsequent step toward the EU, I think that is a good thing. The point I want to make is, let's not confuse this resolution with the delivery that is being required by at least one EU member state and reinforced by a number of EU officials since this resolution is passed, that Ratko Mladic needs to be transferred to The Hague. If that's done, I think that it's a good thing if Serbia and Bosnia and all the countries in the Western Balkans move forward under their own power toward the European Union. But we need to be honest that this is not the same thing as delivering on that requirement.
Amir, I asked this of your president, Haris Selajdic. He had an interesting answer. I wonder what you think. Do you think the problem is with the Dayton Agreement itself, that it's fundamentally flawed? Or do you think it was in the implementation of Dayton to give us all the problems we have now, 15 years later?
Well, I think, first of all, Mr. Haris Selajdic is the last person to have anything to say about the Dayton Accords because he's one of the people who signed it. And yes, essentially, that is the problem, that the then leadership of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which basically decided to give away the Republic for some sort of, well, I don't even know what to call it, a permanent ceasefire. So if structurally the biggest problem with this country is the Dayton Accords, no matter how you implement it, it's not really designed for state building, but rather for keeping peace. But again, Mr. Haris Selajdic is the last person in the world who would have anything to say on the matter.
Okay, finally, let's go to Slobodan for the final thought regarding Dayton. Amir says structurally it was wrong, which gives us all the problems we have now rather than the implementation. What do you think, and what do you think Serbian society thinks about that?
Well, first of all, Dayton was the Dayton Accord was made in such a time when there was still war in the Bosnia. So, with all its mistakes and everything else, it had to be done. Is it still good? I don't know. I wouldn't say people from Bosnia have to say that, but anyway, talking about Dayton Accord is also like talking about that yesterday's declaration. It is the way for starting people talking about what they have, what happened on Balkans and especially in Bosnia, because without that we can never reach end of Balkans war. I don't mean just Bosnia, but all ex-Yugoslavia and everything else. So that's it. That's the point. We must talk.
Okay, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure hearing all of your thoughts. Amir, Slobodan, and Kurt, thank you very much for joining us here on Inside Story.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, the viewer, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments, your suggestions, or your questions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye.